God, we're thankful for today. It's a day of life. It's a gift, and you want us to be responsible with it. And so we're just humbled and grateful that we can gather and we can think about you, and we can find ways in which we can live our full potential that you've given us. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to live above average. So bless us as we think about this and discuss it today. In Jesus' name, amen. The gift of life is an adventure. I believe that. The gift of life is an adventure. The last couple of weeks I've tried to emphasize that over and over again, and I believe it's important for us to have a definition or some context. If we're going to say life is an adventure, the gift of life is an adventure, we need to know what adventure is. And it means an exciting experience. It means bold but usually risky event. It means to explore the unknown with possible danger. Can I share those again? Think about the gift of life being an adventure. It's an exciting experience. It's bold, but usually a risky event. It's the exploration of the unknown with possible danger. And I've said to you before, it doesn't mean that it's easy or comfortable or controllable. And sometimes that's what we want to make out of life. But I want to say to you again, the gift of life is an adventure. I think what we need to all do is every day we need to pause, slow down, reflect, and appreciate this gift of life that we've been given. I say to people, enjoy life and live it as an adventure. Enjoy the life you've been given and live it as an adventure. On this venture, there are two very important realities. There are more than that, but I want to highlight two that exist. Friends, my coaching work and the context of this book was not and is not to try to razzle-dazzle you with new ideas and new thoughts and new concepts that'll blow your mind. Did you know that's really the intent of a lot of authors? Let's see if I can come up with something so outlandish and so new that nobody's ever thought about it, that people go, wow. No, I'm a pretty simple guy. What I'm trying to do is take you back to the basics. I'm taking you back to the fundamentals of life. My friends, we don't have a problem with not enough knowledge. Our problem is not a knowledge problem or a knowledge deficit. It's an application deficit. We don't need more knowledge. We got a whole host of it. We got Google. We're living in this day and age that we have more knowledge we can shake a stick at. It's whether or not we're applying that. And so I want to encourage us that all the coaching tips are very simple, even though they have depth to them, but they're not so you can gain more information. It's to put it on the radar so that you can begin to more fully apply it if you're not working on that in your life. First, individuals have a great potential that needs to be discovered and developed. I'm a firm believer that almost every human being does not fully know, understand, or achieve their full potential. I believe that. You know, being created in the image of God enables us to live a potential that's literally out of this world. Every human being, we're created in the image of God. So we have potential that's out of this world. Again, my coaching work, my tips, and my book are to help people discover their potential, develop that potential, and then rightly deploy that potential. I've been working with people for 40 years. I'm telling you, some people have not yet fully understood their potential. They just don't even know their potential. And if they know it, are they and have they developed it? A lot of people don't know how to develop their potential. And then if they know it and they develop it, are they deploying it? Are they being selfish with it? Are they using it and they're spreading it out and they're making impact? Let me ask you a question, and you don't need to raise your hand. How many of you know your full potential? How many of you are living your full potential? I would probably say none of us are living our full potential. I believe we all have more potential than we've discovered, developed, and are deploying. And so my coaching work is to help us do that. Because, average people don't know their potential. Average people don't develop their potential. Average people don't deploy their potential. It's the people that discover and develop and deploy their full potential that really are living above average. Second, individuals can get stuck in life. Individuals can get stuck in life. Life, I say, is like a book. It's got lots of different chapters. Some of the chapters are incredible. They're wonderful. They're the mountaintop. They're so inspirational. And other chapters of life are just average. You just get up and you go through the routines. You do what you got to do to get by. You pay the bills. You're in survival mode. And some chapters are really, really, really hard. Again, it may be a relational issue, maybe a divorce, maybe the loss of a child, maybe the loss of a job, maybe a financial crisis, maybe health issues, death. I mean, there's a multiple things, and those are the very difficult chapters of life. And so oftentimes people get stuck in life. And you've heard me say that I think there are 7 key areas of life: spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, relational, financial, and occupational. These are the 7 key areas, I think, of holistic life. And what happens as we're living this life of adventure, we can get stuck in one or more areas of those elements of life. And average people get stuck and stay stuck. People who live above average find a way to get unstuck. But listen to me. Most people that go from stuck to unstuck need somebody else. That's why I do my coaching work, or I share my tips, or I can do seminars or workshops. Because listen to me, if somebody gets stuck spiritually, they usually call out to what? A pastor or a priest. If somebody gets stuck physically, they usually join a gym, or they get a health coach. If a person gets stuck mentally or emotionally, they reach out to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. If somebody gets stuck in a relationship, they again can go to a pastor, or they go to a counselor. If they get stuck financially, they go to maybe a financial planner. Do you see what I'm saying? And so my coaching work, my coaching tips, and my book are to help people get unstuck in one or more areas of these lives so they can live an above average life. The goal of helping individuals discover and develop and deploy potential and get unstuck in life is the basis for my book, Living Above Average. I'm convinced that the purpose of my life, the reason that I'm on planet Earth right now, is to love, honor, to follow, to glorify, and to serve my Creator God. And second, to use every gift, talent, ability, and experience that I've had to help others, you and everybody else, to live an above average life. You know, the great commandment in the Bible is to love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. We make it so complex. But the reason I'm on the planet is to know Him, love Him, honor Him, serve Him, share Him, and help every one of you and every other human being that I ever come in contact with to help them live an above average life. So my book is 50 life coaching tips to help change and improve your life. And coaching tips are simply stepping stones that can assist individuals, maybe even couples or teams or companies, businesses, with important realities. The whole idea of a stepping stone is to make opportunity for progress. Can I say that again? A stepping stone is simply to make an opportunity for progress. Let me illustrate. When I was a young kid and I was a youth pastor, we would take kids backpacking up into the Colorado mountains. And more than one time we'd come where we would have a creek or a stream, and the trail went past or over the particular stream or the creek. And yet we had maybe junior high kids and high school kids, and for whatever reason, they couldn't leap over it. They couldn't jump over it. So many of us leaders, we would get down in the river and we'd grab some rocks and we would take them and we would secure them in just the right distance so those kids could take certain small steps to get from one side to the other, because they couldn't do it on their own. And that's what my coaching tips are. They're stepping stones so you can go from average to above average. They're small steps that you can take so that you can leave kind of an old life and go to a new life. You can get rid of an average life and you can move on to an above average life. So today we want to look at 3 different tips that come from my book, Living Above Average, 50 life coaching tips to help change and improve your life. I told you last week we were going to go over tips 2, 9, and 13. And so I'm excited to share these with you today. First of all, coaching tip number 2, step beyond your limits. If you're going to move out of an average life to living above average, you're going to have to step beyond your limit. How many of you know that we all can establish limits in our life? Or even we could call them comfort zones. And what it is, many times it's based out of our fears, or it's been based out of an experience in our life that says, no, you don't want to do that. And so we say, I can't do that, or I won't do that. If you don't recognize that you have established in your life limits, the way you think, the way you make decisions, the way you order your life, or that you've created comfort zones, where you don't have to risk and go to the edge and really live adventurous. If you don't understand that, you're probably going to be caught in average. But if you do recognize that, then you need to step beyond that. I think sometimes we misunderstand success. I don't know about you, but we compare ourselves to other people to determine whether or not we're successful in many different areas of life, don't we? I say, and I believe that the true definition of success is stepping beyond whatever limit, whatever comfort zone you've established in your life. And it can go in any of these areas: spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially, occupationally. Put some time into it. Where have you limited yourself spiritually? Where have you limited yourself physically? Where have you limited yourself mentally or emotionally? Where have you limited yourself relationally? Where have you limited yourself financially? Where have you limited yourself occupationally? And success is you're willing to accept that you've created a limit and a comfort zone, and you're going to step beyond that. You know, I was thinking about it, the limits that we get in our life. And I thought of one back, and I could sit here and talk about all of my limits and comfort zones, and you could too. But I want to highlight one in my life that sounds a little crazy, but it did impact my life. When I was an elementary kid, just a couple of years ago, I played sports. And I'd be out practicing, on the driveway with the hoop up there. And I thought, you know what, I've got this special move. I was pretty quick back then. Age and weight and all these other things. But I had this move where I'd practice this move, and I'd kind of jimmy around, and then I'd move left, and then I'd spin around real quick, and I'd move, and I'd get a layup, or I'd dish it off, and they'd get a layup. And I'd practice, and I'd practice, and I'd practice that. And I couldn't wait for the game. Now, I'm an elementary kid, and I'm sure that college coaches are already looking at me. Because I'm going to be a college basketball player. I'm going to be a college coach. So I'm practicing. So we get out there in the game, and nobody knows this, but I'm thinking, I'm going to use this move. So I'm moving around, and I make this move, and I go left, and I turn around, and the ball goes flying right out of bounds. And I remember looking over the crowd. You look to your parents, you look to your friends, you look to somebody else's parents. People started to laugh. And I heard, he should never do that again. And so you know what? I was determined I was never going to do that again. Because I didn't like people laughing at me. I didn't like the sideline conversations. I needed approval. And so the lie was set the limit. Create a comfort zone so you never can get hurt again. That you'll never get laughed at again. Nobody will make another statement. And I would assume that in your life, maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was a coach. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe it was a husband or wife. My friend, we have a whole lifetime of these kind of things that set limits and comfort zones. And so you know what I did the next morning or afternoon when I went out to practice? I ain't going to do that one again. And I said, no, I am. I am going to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. And if it goes out of bounds once, if it goes out of bounds twice, if it goes out of 3 bounds, I don't care. I'm going to get it done. Even as an elementary kid. I don't want to be average. I want to be above average. My friend, what's limiting you right now from your full potential? What comfort zone have you established to play it safe? I want to turn you to a passage of Scripture. I believe the Bible is our life coaching book, our life coaching tool. Obviously, I like my book, but I think this book is a whole lot better. If you go real quickly to Philippians chapter 4, and verse 13 says this. Paul says, I can do... And if you got your Bible out or when you go home, circle it, star it, underline it, highlight it. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Now that doesn't mean that I can play golf like Tiger Woods. What it means is that the God who has a plan and a purpose for my life, even if I don't believe I can change the world, He's given me the DNA to change the world. He's given you the DNA to change the world. So you can do all things. Step beyond the limits. Step beyond the comfort zones. I had somebody recently that told me that they had tried to step out of their comfort zone and do a project. And kind of like me, they got a disapproval from that particular activity. And nobody likes that, so we want to say, well, I'm never going to do that again. Oh, so you're going to succumb to average. Do you want to live an average life? I don't. I got one chance at it. And that person told me that they were preparing for today. And so they read tip 2, 9, and 13. And when they were reading tip 2, as simple as that is, they said, you know what, I'm not going to be limited. I'm going to step beyond my limit, my fear, my comfort zone, so that I don't play it safe anymore. This book talks about faith and belief that equals miracles. If you're going to live above average, you're going to have to take some risks. I'll even tell you this week, I've been in public speaking for 40 years. I was invited on Friday to speak on a radio program, and I'll tell you next week which radio program it is and when it's going to air. It's going to air on I think the 7th of November. But I want you to know, I'm used to public speaking. I'm used to being around people. But I think I'd only been on the radio one other time, a long, long time ago. You know what? And I was nervous. And there was a part of me that just wanted to cancel. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to risk But my own coaching tip said, hey, don't play it average. Take the risk. Step beyond your fear. Step beyond your anxiety. Step beyond your limit. Don't play it safe. And I did it with God's help and God's strength. And after it was over, I was pumped up. How many people are living average lives? No wonder they're bored. When you get out there and you risk and you step beyond your comfort zone and your limit, man, sometimes it's the most exciting thing that you could ever do. It could bring you encouragement and inspiration. And one last thing, Kathy had a chance to go to New York City with our daughter not too long ago, and I haven't been there, but I think, was it Rockefeller Plaza or somewhere? Rockefeller Center. Well, about a year ago, we went to Seattle, and we found out about 5 years ago or so, we drove up Pikes Peak. And we realized we don't like heights. I never thought that it bothered me, but, getting older, it did. We didn't like that. So when we went to Seattle, everybody said, oh, you got to go up Space Needle. Okay, bing, ding. And it wasn't too bad. We were stepping beyond our limit and our comfort zone. I could have stayed down there and not seen all of Seattle. If you've been up on that. And Kathy, she mentioned that she risked going up the Rockefeller Center. And if you haven't seen New York, what of you? How many of us are missing the view of life because we're limited? We create these comfort zones and we don't take the risk. But I'm telling you, there's a great life out there, my friend. So number 2 is step beyond your limits. Okay, let's go over to coaching tip 9. Think about what you think about. I love this tip. This is really an important tip for me. Obviously, all my tips, I have like 1,350 life coaching tips now, so I feel like I can go speak with anybody in any setting, any situation, and I've got a whole bunch of tools in my toolbox. But this is one that I really like and need, and I get a lot of response from people about this tip. Think about what you think about. Matter of fact, how many of you think about what you think about? The reality is thinking is a lot like breathing. It's so normal and natural, and we do it from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. Well, obviously, through the sleep, we're still breathing. We may not be thinking, but we may be dreaming. But it's so normal and natural, we don't even think about it. When was the last time that you paused and you thought about every breath you took? We don't do that. People don't think about what they think about. And I think it's very important if you're going to move from average to above average that you think about what you think about. The reality is we all have default patterns of thinking. Psychologically, they say that about 75 to 80% of us, our default thinking is negative instead of positive. So if you have, 4 people here, 3 of them, their default thinking is negative, and 1 of them is Roger Sample, who thinks positive. Be around Roger Sample. It can be the most negative thing in the world, and he sees something good about it. I don't understand that, brother. But I love to be around him. But if you don't ever think about what you think about, you don't know what your default thought pattern is. And so you may be living constantly in the negative when you want to be living in the positive. I noticed this a couple of weeks ago when I was writing a life coaching tip. And basically what I was saying is, don't do this and do this. And all of a sudden I thought, think about what you're thinking about. I had fallen prey to my default pattern of negativity versus positivity. So I rewrote that coaching tip. I said, do this, don't do that. I put the positive first. Friends, if you don't ever think about what you think about, you may have a default pattern, default setting where you're looking negative rather than positive. Do you think if your default setting is negative that you're going to live an above average life? No, you're going to be caught in average. So you got to think about what you think about and then get caught like I do when you find out that, oh, that thought is negative rather than positive. Let's take the positive and make it, let's take the negative and make it positive. I want you to turn to another passage of Scripture in Philippians. We were just there and looked at over verse 13, but look at verse 8. Philippians 4:8. Finally, my brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue and if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate, not just think, camp out, meditate on these things. My friends, if you're going to move from an average life to an above average life, you need to think about what you think about. Average people don't evaluate. I've always said to you, you can't improve what you don't evaluate. You need to evaluate. My friends, my coaching work, my tips, and my book are to help people think about what they think about. Again, I've been trained both in counseling and in coaching, and I can sit down with almost anybody, I say in about 15 minutes, and I can ask you questions, and in those 15 minutes, I could probably tell you what you think about more than you think what you think about. I can probably discern your default thought pattern before you do. That's why we need coaches. That's why we need coaching tips. We're not called to do it alone. So let's look at the last one real quick. Coaching tip 13. Improve yourself to improve others. Have you ever wanted to change another person? I asked my wife that. She said, absolutely not. When I first met you, you were perfect. And when I said yes on that wedding day, you were perfect. And we just celebrated 35 years of marriage. And I said, anything you want to change about me? No, you're perfect. Okay, I lied. At least I'm willing to admit it. How many of you have ever wanted to change another person? Your husband, your wife, your children, your parents, your friends, your boss, your coworker, your employees, your neighbors, your pastor. I was going to leave that one out, but I thought I better be honest. Have you ever heard the statement, and I've used it, you really can't change another person? If you use that, you really can't change another person. I agree and I disagree. I agree because I can't get into their body, I can't get into their thoughts and make different decisions for them. But I do believe we have the power to change other people. We have the power to change other people. You know what? Want to know how? You change yourself. You improve others by improving yourself. Many years ago, and I learned this real early on, when I was 15 years old, unfortunately, my parents got divorced. And I have a great relationship with my mom and my dad. My mom's 42 and my dad's getting ready to turn 91. We have a weird family. No, because everybody's 42 here. But as you can appreciate, as a 15-year-old kid, I didn't have a very good relationship with my mother and my father. And I remember for many years I had a poor relationship with my dad, and then I became a Christian, and I realized that I was to honor my dad. And the Bible doesn't say honor your dad if he does everything perfect. Okay? Honor your mother and your father. And so I'd had a real estranged relationship and hardly ever talked to him. And, he's the dad, so he should be calling me, right? And I wanted my dad to change. And all of a sudden I sensed God say to me, you call your dad. And I didn't hear a voice, but that was that impression of God. And call your dad. And I wrestled. No, it's his job. And, he should be doing that. You know how all the stuff we get into. And so I risked and I called my dad. And I'm sure, his jaw probably went open like, oh, you are my son? Anyway, so the point being, then, I was for sure that he was going to call me, right? I called him. It's his turn. 1-to-1. I called, now it's your turn. Go on. He didn't call. So I'm mad again, hacked off, and I felt like God put it on my heart, call your dad again. Oh, I got to go through this whole wrestling. So I called my dad again. Okay. Pretty soon, I just recognized he wasn't going to call me. And I was pointing the finger at him of judgment and condemnation like we do. We want somebody else to change, but God kept telling me to just do what was right, and I began to call my dad. And then pretty soon it became regular. Then it became every week. Guess what? After a while, guess what my dad did if I didn't call him? He called me. And then pretty soon, God said, what else do you want from your dad? I said, well, I want my dad to tell me he loves me. My dad grew up, he's going to be 91. I didn't ever remember my dad telling me he loved me. I know he did, but there wasn't the real verbalization. And so I felt like the Lord said, will you tell your dad you love him? And I thought, no! He's the dad. His job. He needs to do it first. So I rested and I got off the phone and said, Dad, I love you. And I was anticipating that he would say, well, I love you too, son. Didn't hear it. So I called my dad again. Get off the phone. Love you, Dad. All right. Bye. This thing ain't working. I don't like this. But I was committed. I was changing. And I kept telling my dad, I love you whenever we got off the phone. And guess what? A little while later, Dad, I love you. I love you too, son. Touching moment. Then I believe the Lord said, what else do you want from your dad? I said, $1 million. No. Access to his bank account, his credit card. No. I want my dad to hug me. My dad's almost 91. In that day and age, if they don't hug, I'm all over my kids. You see me with my kids, watch out. I'm on them. They cannot get away from it. Dad, leave me alone. I squeeze them. Give me some breath. My dad didn't do that. And so I want my dad to hug me. So I remember real clearly, I'm going to hug my dad. He walks in the door. Hi, Dad. It was like hugging a refrigerator that had died many years earlier. It was so stinking cold. Then the next time I see my dad, same experience. But I remember the time that he walked in the door, and before I got to him, he came over and he hugged me. My friend, if you're going to live above average, you've got to quit pointing the finger outward, and you've got to point the finger inward. You got to stop being a reactor, and you need to be an initiator. Actually, if you want to write these down, Luke 6:38, I'm not going to go there, but it says, give and it shall be given to you. It doesn't say it'll come to you and then you give it back. It says you give it away and then it'll come back. It says what? In Matthew 7:12, do unto others as you wish they would do to you. If you're going to live above average, you're going to have to improve yourself so that you can improve others. You're going to have to change yourself to change others. All those maybe negative or broken relationships you have, and that you're pointing the finger at somebody else, and you want them to change, and you're blaming and accusing them, if you stay there, you're going to be living an average life. But if you're willing to be courageous and understand the gift of life is an adventure, and you're willing to improve and change yourself, you can change another person. Don't give up. This little story I told you about my dad didn't happen in 3 months. It took about 15 years. But thank God I didn't give up, because I don't want to be average. I want to live above average. And so today I want to tell you, you don't have to live an average life. You can live above average. But what I want to encourage you to do is to identify and step beyond your limits and your comfort zone. I want you to begin to think about what you think about. And I want you to work hard on improving yourself so that you can improve others. Next week, I'm going to look at coaching tips 20, 21, and 25. And I just really want to encourage you to read those and come and we'll talk about it. And so the tips that we went over today, 2, 9, and 13, I want to encourage you to think about it, process, identify your limit and your comfort zone. I want you to identify what your default thought patterns are. And I want you to start thinking about how you can improve a relationship by improving yourself. And get with another church member, or call somebody for coffee, or buy them a book and say, let's get together once a week or every other week. You become the life coach. Don't let me just be the life coach. So again, my coaching work, my tips, and my book are to help people discover, develop, and deploy their full potential. And that when they get stuck, help them get unstuck. Thanks.